to The Countdown. I'm a Countdown host, MJ Book, back for another episode here in the world of The Countdown. Hope everybody is doing well. Been a little busy and a little distracted, so sorry for the delay here in getting this next episode in. I've also been waiting on a few things, so no excuse. My fault. Do apologize, but I'm back and got another episode here for you. And before we get started with it, I do want to do a quick thanks and shout outs to recently got a lot of follows and likes via Instagram and Facebook, and do want to say thank you to all those. If you're recently just joined in within the last week or two, want to give you all a big shout out and a big thanks for finding this show, this podcast. Hope if you've listened to any episodes or watched any episodes, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any ideas for me, because some of those people who are following and watching and listening and liking also have their own podcast. So, hey, you got any recommendations for me? I'm always willing to listen. Anything to help the podcast and make it a better show for you all. I'm willing to listen to any of that. So, of course, at the end of the show, I'll give you all the methods you can contact me. But we're here to do a countdown, and we're gonna get close. We're almost nearing the end of favorite movies of the 80s. This has been a long series, and we are now up to 1981. Oof, boy, there were some big movies that came out. Like I said, these early 80s had some really, really big movies, and it does get a little harder when you start getting to these early 80s on two different spectrums. One, you had really big movies, and you also had not a lot else. I mean, this was kind of a weird type of era, because at this point, yours truly is only about 2 to 3 years old in 1981. So, it's obviously a lot of these movies I don't remember when they first came out. They're movies I watched years after the fact. So, doesn't matter. This is a 10-spot countdown. Of course, do have some honorable mentions, but I will save them for later. So, and here we go. Let's get started with the countdown. So, number 10 on this countdown. This is a movie starring an actor who I've mentioned before during this countdown. In fact, it was somewhat recently I mentioned him. He is a comic legend, a comic genius, and this is one of his early movies, and I do believe this may have actually been the first of this actor's movies I ever saw, was this one. Like I said, it's a comedian legend that we lost. This movie had two directors, Oz Scott and Michael Schultz. Schultz was an uncredited director. Stars and written by Richard Pryor. It also stars Cicely Tyson. Does that give you an idea what it is? If not, there's an even better way to know what it is. I'm talking about Bustin' Loose. Bustin' Loose is an interesting comedy where Richard Pryor plays this parolee named Joe Braxton, and he's given this chance to drive these kids, these school kids on a bus. And it's, he's not exactly the best of characters, even though he's funny. But it's kind of a redemption for him. And he finds it redemption not only through these kids, but also through Cicely Tyson's character. One of the funniest scenes in this movie was the scene with and it's kind of hard for people to think this is funny, but the bus got stuck in the mud. It's at night. So Richard, his character walks off to try to find some help. And along the way, you start seeing around him fire and torches and Ku Klux Klan members, and the Klan help him push the bus out of the mud. Now, obviously, the idea that the Ku Klux Klan would help a bus full of kids, there was Asian, Mexican, blacks on there. Cicely Tyson, of course, black. Richard Pryor for damn sure black, and the Klan helped them. Hysterical. Obviously, real life, that ain't gonna happen. But it was hysterical. It was so ridiculous. But Busting Loose, like I said, I'm pretty doggone sure this is the first Richard Pryor movie I watched was this one, and just hysterical. And along the way, I would start watching his comedy movies, his stand-up movies, I mean, and The Toy, for example, and Moving, and See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Stir Crazy, all these other movies that he would end up doing. Silver Streak, I think it was Silver Streak, I think it was the name of it. Just a bunch of movies. Rest in peace to Richard Pryor, one hell of a comedian and an all-time legend. Number 10, Busting Loose. All right, number 9. Number 9 is probably going to make some people laugh a little bit that this movie would even be on here. Some of you might not have even known this movie existed. That's not going to shock me. It's not going to hurt me. It is a very low-key movie, but it's just a flick I happen to love. This was directed by William A. Fraker, and I'm going to name the cast, and you're probably still not going to know what it is. Clinton Spilsbury, Michael Horse. You'll know this eye, though. Christopher Lloyd. Anybody have any ideas what this movie is? You probably are lost thinking, what on earth is this movie that this brother is talking about? Well, let me show you what I'm talking about. Here we go. There you go. Legend of the Lone Ranger. Now, a few years ago, there was a Lone Ranger movie done with Johnny Depp. I first heard about that movie, and I'm not a Johnny Depp guy, so I already was having some misgivings. It's like you couldn't just find a real Indian. And then you watch the trailer and you get the idea. Is this about the Lone Ranger, or is this about Tonto being played by Johnny Depp? Because I remember the trailers just having Tonto all over the place. I'm like, where's the Lone Ranger? The movie's called The Lone Ranger. It's not called Tonto and the Lone Ranger. Tonto's name not even in the title. It's called The Lone Ranger. So I hated that movie. This is a far better Lone Ranger movie. It just tells the origin, how this Texas Ranger shows how he was ambushed by this group of outlaws, and he fights back by donning on a mask, and along for the ride is his friend Tonto and Silver Bullet, you know, the bullets and the Hi-Ho Silver. I love this movie. It's one of those movies. I don't own it, at least not on DVD. I have it on VHS, but it's just one of those goofy little movies that I happen to love. Not saying it's the greatest movie ever made by any means. I've watched it recently about a few months ago, and I was like, ooh, but I still enjoyed it. It's a guilty pleasure. I would definitely recommend watching this over that stupid Johnny Depp piece of shit. I hope somewhere down the line we can get a really good, a good attempt at the Lone Ranger, because the last one failed. And of course, the Lone Ranger is related to the Green Hornet. No shock that the Green Hornet movie was a piece of shit, and I've never watched it, but that trailer was horrible, and I'd been begging. Rob, you were right there with me. We've been begging for a Lone Ranger, or not Lone Ranger, a Green Hornet movie, and I gave it a chance up until I saw that trailer, and it was just horrible. But Lone Ranger, Christopher Lloyd plays a real badass as far as being a villain for the times. He plays a despicable human being, and he's very good at playing a despicable human being. So this is an enjoyable movie. It's one of those, kind of BC movies. Just don't study it too much. Just sit back, get your popcorn, just watch the movie, and just have some fun. Don't study it too much. But number 9 is The Legend of the Lone Ranger. All right, number 8. These movies are going to keep getting corny. I mean, you have to think about the 80s, especially there was some corn as far as movies go. And this next one is definitely along that line. Stars directed by Charles Jarrott. Probably said the name wrong. Stars Michael Crawford, Oliver Reed, Barbara Carrera, and it is none other than Condor Man. I know. If you've watched this movie, it is utterly ridiculous, but I liked it. This Condor Man is the story of a cartoonist named Woody. That's what they named him. And one of the characters he created is this character called Condor Man. And the movie starts out with him doing this publicity stunt in Paris where he jumps off the Eiffel Tower in this outfit. He's not, he's not like a real superhero out there fighting crime. He's a cartoonist, and he somehow gets himself involved in this spy mission where he's dealing with Soviet spies and trying to defect over to the West, and he's called upon to help the spy. And by I mean called upon, his friend is actually a spy. It's a weird. The plot is not important because it's just ridiculous. But he uses the tools of Condor Man, which includes the suit, a boat, a car, and tries to save the day. And it's pure comedy. It's ridiculous, but for some reason, I love this movie. I have this on VHS, and I used to have this on DVD until it got stolen, which pissed me off. So this is one of those movies I do need to rebuy, and there's so many movies I still need to re-own, but eventually I'll re-own this. I remember, of course, the movie starts out with this right before the Eiffel Tower thing. The title credits is this animation of Condor Man flying around Paris, real Paris. So it's an animation flying on the screen. I remember, when I first watched this movie, I was like, did they make a sequel? Because I was totally bought in. Clearly, they didn't make a sequel. And Michael Crawford is actually a famous opera singer. He was in the Phantom of the Opera. So it's and Barbara Carrera, she was a Bond girl. Unfortunately, she was a Bond girl in the Americanized Bond movie Never Say Never Again. But beautiful, beautiful woman. Oliver Reed is just a great bad guy. He just has that look, that voice. He's just a great actor and great at being a bad guy. Condor Man, again, it's another one of those movies you just kind of have to sit back and watch. It's goofy, it's silly, it makes no sense, it's complete popcorn. But hey, not every movie has to be Oscar worthy. So Condor Man, I enjoyed it. Number 8, Condor Man. This countdown has started off really goofy. I mean, got Busting Loose comedy and Legend of the Lone Ranger, which is kind of, B movie. And then we got Condor Man. So what the hell could be possibly next? More corn? No, not exactly. I mean, you could argue this is corn, but this isn't a comedy. This is an action movie, and it stars a couple of people who are big time actors, and one, unfortunately, we did unfortunately lose and passed away a few years ago. Let me just put this up here right now for you folks there on YouTube. It is Nighthawks, which is it has 2 directors. One's uncredited. It's directed by Bruce Malmuth and Gary Nelson. Gary Nelson's uncredited. It stars, I guess you see, Sylvester Stallone right there. Rutger Hauer. Rutger plays one of Europe's most lethal terrorists, and he's arrived in New York, and they put together this elite team to try to find him. And one of the undercover cops assigned to the case is played by Sylvester Stallone and his partner, Billy D. Williams. And you can already tell it's kind of a different movie if you look at Sly over there. He's bearded, so he's got a full-blown beard. You're not going to see a lot of, the scenes with his shirt off, none of that. But Rutger Hauer is an actor who I think doesn't get a lot of props and a lot of credit. A lot of people don't say his name, but he's a great actor, of course, in Nighthawks. I love him in Blind Fury, and of course, the legendary movie of Blade Runner. He's just really good at playing a bad guy, and I think as far as being a bad guy, with this and the thing about Blade Runner is I don't look at him in Blade Runner as a bad guy. I know he is on some respects, but I never looked at him as a bad guy. And I think it kind of spoke to the way the character was written, and of course the acting of Rutger Hauer. This totally different, complete bastard, total bad guy. You want him dead, but you enjoy him on the screen as well, because he's a charismatic bad guy and he's just good at being evil. And so even though you're not rooting for him, you don't mind seeing him on the screen. Like I said, this is just a great movie, and of course with Billy D. Williams in there as well, before he became a Gotham City DA. Like I said, this is an enjoyable movie. I recently did buy this on Blu-ray, so I do own this movie on Blu-ray finally. Took me a while. I had it on VHS, never had it on DVD. Literally, I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago. I bought this on Blu-ray. Very enjoyable movie. Good. Now it's an action, it's a cop action type of movie. It's got that feel. It takes place in the 80s New York, so it's got that kind of 80s New York kind of feel. The music, of course, extremely 80s. But this is still an enjoyable movie. Definitely would recommend it. It's one of the Sylvester Stallone movies that people don't talk about, and I think they should. They talk mainly about obviously Rocky and Rambo, but Nighthawks is a very good movie. Definitely recommend it, and that's why for me it was number 7. Number 6. Number 6 is a different kind of movie. It is a cartoon movie, but we're not talking about Mickey Mouse. We're not talking about Bugs Bunny here. Not talking about Transformers or G.I. Joe. No, this was a little different as far as cartoons go. What movie am I talking about? Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal, of course, would get a sequel, which I did watch. It's not as good as the original Heavy Metal. Now, what makes Heavy Metal different? This is adult, very adult. You have language, nudity, sex, violence. It is not a cartoon show that little kids should be watching by any means. This is very adult themed, and it's basically what happens is this green orb comes from outer space, and it is ultimate evil, and it terrorizes this little girl in the house, and it tells all these stories, this anthology of evil, in a way, of places that this green orb has been, different planets, different time, just telling multiple different stories, but they're all tied together. And Heavy Metal, with the title being Heavy Metal, that's exactly the kind of music you have in it. So it's got that really early 80s heavy metal rock music feel. And you can tell just by the logo it's going to have that. But it's definitely a different kind of a cartoon movie, but that's what makes it so damn good. When I first watched it, I remember I was sneaking watching it because I didn't know if my mother was going to let me watch this. I didn't think she'd let me if she discovered what I was looking at. But I was able to get through the movie. She was none the wiser, or if she was, she sure never showed it to me. Don't watch this movie edited. I watched it once edited just to see how it would be, and it takes away from it. So definitely recommend watching this cartoon movie. Like I said, this is not for kids. It is so. Unless you're one of those parents that's going to show things like that are sexual in nature, nudity, violence, strong language. If you're one of those parents that shows that to your kids, fine, cool, go ahead. But if you're not, don't get fooled and accidentally play this just thinking, well, it's a cartoon. It is not just a cartoon. It is far, far more than that. So Heavy Metal, like I said, it's just an amazing, amazing show, movie, directed. It's got several directors. The voice acting, there's some voice actors in here that would be familiar, like John Candy, Joe Flaherty, just to name a couple. I'm trying to think, there was a couple other people in there, but I'll just stop at those folks. But it's an amazing movie. John Vernon's in it, and Eugene Levy. Now I remember, they were both in it too. But just an amazing animated movie. Like I said, they made a sequel. I believe it was called Heavy Metal 2000. It wasn't bad, but just not as good as the original. Definitely stick to this original. Just remember, this is an adult-themed cartoon. Don't probably want to share this with the kiddies. But for me, it was number 6 in this countdown of favorite movies from 1981. Oh, boy. We are now in the top 5. Top 5 movies from the 80s. And I know there's some of you are waiting on specific movies that you knew came out in this year, wondering, are they here? Where are they? What spot will they occupy? Well, let's not waste any time here. Number 5 is Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans, of course, did get a remake as well, with Liam Neeson in it. I actually own it. It's not bad, but I do think the original with Harry Hamlin is better. And Harry Hamlin plays Perseus, who battles all the Greek type monsters to save Princess Andromeda. Of course, Medusa's in this famous scene with Medusa, the Kraken. This movie stars Harry Hamlin, of course, Claire Boom. It's directed by Desmond Davis. It's like I said, it's this early 80s of action type movies, but it's set against the backdrop of the ancient Greek heroes. So Harry Hamlin, not exactly the most Greek person in the world, but I just I never bought that little part of it, but I was able to ignore it. The movie's entertaining. Harry Hamlin, of course, would reprise the role of Perseus for a video game named God of War 2. And when I first played that game, you fight Perseus. You fight him. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill him. And then I was hearing the voice. I'm like, wait a minute. That voice is seeming real familiar. And as he kept talking, I'm like, oh, that's Harry Hamlin. So the fact that Harry Hamlin would come back to voice Perseus in a video game, that was just awesome. So Clash of the Titans, again, they made a sequel. They made a reboot of this, which then got a sequel. Sam Worthington, it was okay, but definitely far better prefer the original. Now, the special effects are somewhat comical at times, very comical, especially Medusa. Which, if you don't know who Medusa is, it's this woman that's got the snakes in her, her hair is snakes and she's half snake. And, if you stare at her, you turn to stone. And the only way he can beat the Kraken is by getting the head of Medusa. That's the only way he can beat the Kraken, because the Kraken is going to be kind of killing Princess Andromeda. So he's on this mission to save Princess Andromeda, and that's the only thing that can do it, is getting Medusa. And of course, it's a long, drawn-out trip where a lot of things happen along the way. But you will have to find out what those things are by watching the movie and see if Perseus can save Princess Andromeda. Hint, hint, I think you know what happens. But Clash of the Titans, great classic movie. Harry Hamlin, not exactly an actor that stands out to me. I know he was in LA Law, but I never watched it. This is pretty much the only thing I ever saw him in. This is the only thing I know him for, is this. But this is a big one, and it made it number 5 for me as far as movies from 1981. Clash of the Titans. Okay, number 4. There's certain things that have been mentioned in the countdown a lot. Star Trek, Batman, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But there is another thing that has been mentioned a lot. Bond. James Bond. And of course, in 1981, we had a James Bond movie. Now, some who know me will be shocked that it'll even be a James Bond movie on here, because it's Roger Moore era. And I've said numerous times, for me, not a big fan of the Roger Moore Bond movies. But that doesn't mean he had nothing but bad ones. There was good ones. And this is one of my favorite of his movies. Not a lot of people like it, but I actually love this Bond movie. It is For Your Eyes Only. Roger Moore returns as James Bond, of course, and there's a lot of things going on in this movie. There's revenge. This movie was directed by John Glenn, who has been working with the Bond movies as a second unit director. He was a part of the photography, I believe. So he's a Bond vet. James Bond is assigned to find a British vessel in this with some weapons encryption device. It's falling into evil hands. He's trying to prevent that. You kind of trying to figure out who the bad guy is in this. Carol Paquette, I probably said her name wrong, is a woman who's watched her family get brutally murdered, and she's out for revenge. One of those type of deals. And of course, along the way, she meets James Bond. T'Pol is in this, who was a Fiddler on the Roof, legendary actor. He was also in Flash Gordon. Like I said, there's a moment in this movie that sticks out to me. And for some people, they don't like it because of the type of Bond Roger Moore was at this point. It's kind of on this outlet, this cliff area, and this dude in a car is trying to run over Bond. Bond eventually makes the guy miss him, and now he's just hanging off of this cliff. And Roger Moore Bond just calmly walks over, looks at him, looks at the cliff, looks down, and he kicks the car. The guy falls to his death. Now, a lot of people thought this was way too cold-blooded for a Roger Moore Bond. That this is something that you would definitely see Sean Connery's Bond do at the time, which they're absolutely right. Connery's Bond definitely would have done this. I think all the Bonds really would have done this. It's a moment that some folks just did not like. I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorite Bonds because he has a harder edge. But it also is one of those first Bond movies where I was like, is he getting a little older? Is he getting a little too old for this? This was one of those the first Bond movie where I started noticing it. Later, of course, it would be just in your face that he's too old for it. But it was around this time I started really noticing he may be getting a little too old for this, but you still let it go because it wasn't terribly creepy. I mean, there is one chick in this movie who's a skater who's desperately trying to bang Bond, and that's a little creepy because she looks like she's 18 and Roger definitely does not look like he's 18. So that is a little creepy, but like I said, it's one of my favorite Roger Moore Bond movies. This and The Spy Who Loved Me, for example, those are a couple of my favorite Roger Moore Bond movies. Octopussy is another good one. I say he's not my favorite Bond, but that does, like I said, it doesn't mean he didn't have any good movies. He didn't have any good Bond movies. This is one of his best Bond movies, was For Your Eyes Only. Very, very good movie. And that's why it makes it on number 4. Come on, you knew I'd have to have a Bond movie. If you knew a Bond movie came out, you knew it was going to be in this countdown. I'm too much of a Bond geek. So number 4, For Your Eyes Only. Okay. Number 3. We have a new genre in this list now, in this countdown list. We've had comedies. We've had your action movies, Westerns, ancient Greek movies. We even had a cartoon. Well, now we're getting into horror movies. And we're getting into one of the all-time great horror movies, a legendary horror movie that unfortunately has had a disastrous ride. That movie is Halloween 2. And by Halloween 2, obviously I mean the one with Jamie Lee Curtis. Halloween 2 immediately takes up where the original Halloween 1 left you. She's being taken, Schroed's being taken to the hospital, and Mike Myers, you saw at the end of the original movie, he had disappeared after what looked like he was dead, but he disappeared. He's still following Laurie Strode and tormenting her in this hospital. And of course, Dr. Loomis, he's not going to be too far away. He's still on the hunt for Myers, while Myers is just absolutely terrorizing a very traumatized Scream Queen, Jamie Lee Curtis. And here's the thing. These original Halloween movies, Halloween movies later would have more violence. But to me, that's a cop-out. Any movie can have more blood. It's a cop-out. I liked the tension that the original first 2 Halloween movies did. I own the first 2 on Blu-ray. I love the first 2. I love the most recent Halloween movie, which of course is getting a sequel that trailers came out about a month or so ago. Cannot wait for the new for that Halloween movie when it comes out. I will be watching that. Who knows? Maybe I'll do a review for it. But the original movies, of course, this was written by the legend John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, directed by Rick Rosenthal, stars, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance and Charles Cyphers. The tension that was in the originals just were not able to be matched later on down the line. And of course, the next movie wouldn't even have Michael Myers in it, had nothing to do with Michael Myers. And then, of course, they go back. The Halloween movies have been through some shit. And then, of course, Rob Zombie showed up and completely butt-fucked the hell out of it and just ruined it and destroyed it, and to a point where I couldn't even listen to his music anymore because he pissed me off so much. And with what he did, I can't even watch any movies now that he directed. He completely destroyed Halloween, and it utterly pissed me off. The only one I can try to get through is House of a Thousand Corpses. But man, he destroyed Halloween. But this is classic Halloween with of course, the beautiful Jamie Lee Curtis, who to me is still beautiful. Definitely love the original Halloween movies. Definitely strongly recommend watching Halloween, the original Halloween 1 and the original Halloween 2. Watch those, not the Rob Zombie Halloween and Halloween 2, the originals. Those are definitely must own, must watch for Halloween. I typically will watch one of those along with a Freddy Krueger movie. Of course, if you listen to an earlier show, me and Eric counted down our favorite horror movies. The Halloween franchise made it on my list. It was the original, so strongly love these movies. Just the first two of course, the series, and of course the most recent one, which brought back Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. I'm not talking about H2O. That was terrible. But Halloween 2, amazing movie. Love the tension. And of course, the music. The music is awesome. That's something the most recent Halloween movie captured, was the music was so damn amazing. I got the soundtrack to that new movie because it was so much like the original. So again, great job. Love Halloween 2. Unfortunately, it takes a huge shit after this, and it takes a long time for this franchise to recover. But I own the first two. I own the most recent. I have all the Halloween movies right now that I want. We'll see what happens with the new one. Hopefully it's good. They've obviously proven they can put together a good Halloween movie. So I feel good about what that movie is going to be. And God, I hope they don't fuck it up. But number 3, Halloween 2. And now that leads us to number 2. And oddly enough, number 2 deals with a man who I just named. Not Michael Myers, though. John Carpenter. Carpenter's name has been mentioned a few times here. And with movies like The Thing, we just named him with Halloween. But there was another movie that he was involved in. This one, though, he was the director. And of course, he was a writer. He wrote this with Nick Castle. This movie starred Kurt Russell, Lee Van Cleef, Ernest Borgnine. It is Escape from New York. Call me Snake. Of course, Kurt Russell plays Snake Plissken. And this movie, for the time, takes place in the future, 1997. And U.S. President's plane, who's played by Donald Pleasance, again, another name I just said, his plane crashes in Manhattan. And the whole area has kind of become this giant security prison, this maximum security prison. And they send in Snake, who's this bank robber, to go in and get the president. And Snake is not your typical hero. And that's what makes it good. He's pure anti-hero. He's a bank robber. He's a crook, but he's a crook you root for. You like Snake Plissken. Snake Plissken is the kind of guy that, hey, you don't have to invite him to dinner, but if he's got my back in a dark alley, I know I'm going to be pretty safe. Now, there was a guerrilla type of shooting the way they did this movie. This movie was filmed in St. Louis, I believe is what it was, but it was the bad parts of St. Louis. The part, that in the 80s, there was St. Louis didn't look too nice. And it was a lot of abandoned buildings and a lot of questionable people just milling around. And it was just a really weird area. In fact, Kurt Russell tells a funny story of he just was supposed to run up the street and the camera would just kind of stay back and just watch him running up. And he would turn the corner. And he did. And there was these 3 guys there. This is completely off camera. Nobody else can see it. Now, he's in full Snake regalia. He's got the machine gun and everything. And they look at Snake. Snake looks at them. And these guys just kind of go, hey, man, easy. So he intimidated them. 3 of them, 1 of him. But they looked at him, saw the gun. They're like, hey, man, easy. They didn't know they were stumbling onto a movie set. So anyway, this, of course, does get a sequel, Escape from L.A., which I do like. I love Escape from L.A. Obviously not as good as Escape from New York, which I have on Blu-ray. I own Escape from New York. I don't own Escape from L.A. It's one of those movies that I mean to get, and one of these days I'll friggin' do it. But this is just a fun movie. I keep hearing that they want to remake Escape from New York or do a sequel to the Escape franchise. I'd be down, but it'd be really rough seeing somebody else play Snake other than Kurt Russell. Kurt has mentioned before that he would love to play Snake Plissken again. So that would be kind of interesting. But also in this movie is Isaac Hayes. I said Donald Pleasance. Adrienne Barbeau is in this. Harry Dean Stanton is in this. Charles Cyphers is in this. So it's a very good cast. Very good movie. Thoroughly enjoy this movie. It's a shame that it's the runner up. It really is, because it's so damn good, but it speaks to how good the movies of the 80s were, that this was runner up only, but it's an honorable runner up. Proudly own this movie, as I just said. I love Escape from New York, and its place is secure. I would love to have it as number one, but when I say what number one is, I think you'll understand why that one is number one. So, runner up, Escape from New York. What is number one? Well, before I say number one, let's do a little review on what got us here. Number 10 was Richard Pryor's Busting Loose. Number 9 is Legend of the Lone Ranger. Number 8 is Condor Man. Number 7 is Sylvester Stallone and Rutger Hauer's and Nighthawks. Number 6 is the cartoon adult cartoon Heavy Metal. 5 is Clash of the Titans with Harry Hamlin. Number 4 is James Bond's movie. Roger Moore as James Bond in For Your Eyes Only. Number 3 is Halloween 2. And number 2, the runner-up, Escape from New York with Kurt Russell. Oh boy, number 1. I jammed through this one pretty quick. Didn't think I would, but I jammed through this one real quick. Number 1. If you know about the movies that came out in this year, then you know there's only one movie that deserves to be number 1. And you know what it is. Every one of you knows what it is. Rob, you know what it is. I'm sure you already knew what it was going to be. Come on. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Come on. There's no other movie that deserves to be number 1 over Raiders of the Lost Ark from this year. It was an easy slam dunk that Raiders of the Lost Ark was number 1. This movie takes place in 1936, and it's about an archaeologist, Dr. Henry Jones, aka Indiana Jones, who's hired by the government, the U.S. government, to find the Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis do and use it for very, very bad things. This, of course, is directed by the great and legendary Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, Paul Freeman, John Rhys Davies. Just an awesome movie. And I've mentioned this before, but it's such a legendary line. Of course, we get to that moment where they're digging into the chamber to get to the Ark, and they look down and they see that room full of snakes. And of course, Indiana Jones does not like snakes. We learned that he just does not like snakes. And he looks down, he looks up, he's like, snakes, why do it have to be snakes? And John Rhys Davies busts in, asps, very dangerous, you go first. It's just an amazing line. It's just hysterical. And of course, when he does fall, you don't see it anymore, but that scene where he's face to face with a cobra in the original film, you actually, now there's obviously there's a glass partition between Harrison and a cobra, because obviously you don't want the star face to face with the cobra and nothing between them. Well, in the original run of it, the original film, you actually see the reflection. You can see a reflection in between, so you can tell that there's glass. They've obviously, with the new technologies afforded on Blu-rays and DVDs, they've edited that out, so you don't even see it anymore. But if you are one of those people that does have an original filming of it, which I have on VHS, you can actually see the reflection, which is hysterical. Also, when they were doing that scene, there's a moment where the cobra spits venom just all across the glass partition, and the snakes were creepy and everything, but everybody I've watched makings of, everything got really serious when that cobra showed up. Nobody was playing around anymore with the cobra. It's just a creepy looking snake. I hate snakes myself. So that scene to me is one of the grossest scenes in movie history. Just looking at the snakes on top, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies because I'm terrified. I hate snakes. I hate snakes. But Harrison Ford, I mean, what role of his was bigger? Is it this one? Was it Blade Runner? Was it Han Solo? Was it Jack Ryan? I mean, he's had some very good characters, but definitely, if it's not the first character you think of with Harrison, it is definitely the second, is Indiana Jones. Of course, this movie would spawn off sequels. It would spawn off the Temple of Doom, and then it would be The Last Crusade, and that would be our trinity, our 3 movies for a very long time. And then, of course, they made Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is a gigantic piece of shit. And there was a TV show, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which actually is good. They're currently working on Indiana Jones 5. I, I, I'm part of me is saying I will not watch it because how absolutely horrid Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was. I can't buy the series on Blu-ray because it's going to include that. So I have a DVD series of the Indiana Jones movies, and it's just Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade. I'm covered. I'm covered right there. And it's got a whole lot of features on there and makings of for each. Just I'm covered. I'm covered right there. I never have to. I would love to get it on Blu-ray, but I don't want to own Kingdom of the Crystal Skull because it is just an absolute piece of shit. I'd rather own Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. But like I said, Indiana Jones, the story, the action, the acting, the music, everything about this character, the sound effects, just everything, the clothing, the hat, the whip, the jacket. This character has become an absolute legend, and it's funny what could have happened had Harrison not gotten the role, because at one moment Tom Selleck was actually in line and about to play Indiana Jones. It was going to be Tom Selleck, but then he got a little job called Magnum PI, and so he couldn't do the movie. He went and did Magnum PI, which not a bad choice for him. Of course, he'd become a television legend. He'd become a Hollywood superstar based off Magnum PI. Would he have been good as Indiana Jones? It'd have been different. It would have been different. And I think personally, I don't think the film would have spawned off the sequels it did had it been Tom. It was for the best that Tom did not get this role. I remember John Shea, who played Lex Luthor on Lois and Clark. He was also in a TV show called Mutant X, I believe is what it was called. John Shea was in line at once to play Indiana Jones, but the stars were aligned. We got the right Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford, and thankfully, this is one of those movies that was good because George Lucas wasn't involved. I mean, he was he wrote the story, he was involved in that part of it, but he wasn't directing it. Thank God. Like I said, Raiders, an amazing movie. Definitely recommend watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is the best of the Indiana Jones movies. Second best to me is The Last Crusade, but The Last Crusade and Raiders sometimes can flip-flop. They're both so equal that they can flip-flop. Temple of Doom, which I always liked, is the worst of the original trilogy, and it was the worst Indiana Jones movie until Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They said, no, we want that title. And I don't believe they could make a worse Indiana Jones movie, but I don't want them to prove me wrong. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, we all remember that theme. We all remember the silhouette with him in the hat. Karen Allen back then, beautiful woman. Like I said, John Rhys Davies stealing the movie is one of the supporting characters, but dang, he just stole it. Denham Elliott, of course, is also in this movie. This was just a fun action adventure movie. And I find it hard to believe that there's anybody out there that has not seen this, but I know of people who hasn't. I think, Eric, you said you have not seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. Eric, watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Please watch it. Of the movies I just named, that is the one I expect you to watch soon. Watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is an absolute classic. Rob, you right there with me. You and I, we've talked about Raiders a lot. Obviously, you and I unfortunately saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but Raiders of the Lost Ark, awesome movie, earns its spot #1 movies from 1981. And there we go. That's our countdown. 10 movies from 1981. And what did you think? You have your own opinions? You have your own ideas of what was the better movie? Was there movies that I forgot? Was there movies that I should have mentioned? Was there movies that you would have put in a different order? There's a lot of ways you can let me know. You can, of course, send an email. You can email me at thecountdown2020@gmail.com. You can also go on to Facebook. Go to the Facebook page. Just search at the Countdown 2020 Podcast 1. Go on to Twitter. Just search at the Countdown PO1. You can listen to the show on Spotify. Just search the Countdown 2020. I'm on Instagram. Just search the Countdown 20. I'm on Amazon Audible. You can listen to the episodes. Just search the Countdown Podcast. Of course, YouTube. Got the YouTube channel. Just search the Countdown Podcast with MJ Book. I'm on iHEART Radio. Just search the Countdown Podcast. All episodes are available through Podbean. You can just search on Podbean, the Countdown Podcast, or you can go on to thecountdown2020.podbean.com. And that's where you have the availability to have the archive. That's where the archive is. And you can listen to all my episodes right there. Season 1, we're, of course, now in Season 2. So that's your avenue to listen to everything. Now I'm going to mention just a few honorable mentions for that 1981. Gulliver's Travels, Arthur, The Great Muppet Caper, the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, Body Heat. Those are the honorable mentions. Probably not many of you thought of any of those movies, and that's fine. But those are mine. But please, those are all the methods you can get a hold of me. If you have any ideas for countdowns, please use any of those avenues. If you want to share with me your own countdown, please go ahead. You have anything you want to tell me at all, let me know right there. If you have any ideas to make the show better, go ahead, let me know. Those are your avenues. And of course, as I always do, always want to throw out a shout out to 3GW, Third Generation Wrestling. If you're a professional wrestling fan, please listen to 3GW, hosted by the Real Big E Eric and the Ambassador Rob. I'm a contributor onto the show, as well as the good brother Blake, and of course the Doc, who recently came back into the house. Doc, we got to get you back here on the countdown here. We need to do another episode. So that's all I got for you. So I will catch you all again. Not yet. One more thing I got to say. One more thing. Couple things, actually. One, got to shout out to Kevin McLeod, Incomtech.com, for the royalty-free music, Ice Flow, that you hear at the beginning of the show. And for those who listen, you hear at the end. And also, as far as the YouTube, real quick, I've reached a decision with the YouTube that I'm going to after this, I'm only going to post episodes on YouTube as far as videos where I have guests. I figure that with guests, it makes it a little more special. So I will do this show with guests on YouTube. Still post the audios on there, of course. But as far as you seeing me and everything, I figured it's better to only do it when I have guests. It makes it a little more special than just doing it every time. Now, if you disagree with me, that's cool. Please let me know. I love to hear from you all. I get messages and with people who have suggestions. So please use all the avenues. And now let's do this right. I will catch you all again on the next episode of The Countdown. Have yourself a great day or evening, whatever time it is. Bye-bye.